Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. When it comes to Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, his story in China is rich and diverse. It is not only because of his expansion of territories, military victories, and the promotion of the Silk Road, but also due to his complex relationships with the women in his harem, which became legendary in history. Now, let's talk about the stories between Emperor Wu and several of his important consorts. The first one to mention is the story between Emperor Wu and his first wife, Empress Chen. This relationship began with the famous Golden House to Hide the Beauty legend. Chen Ajiao's beauty and wisdom captured Emperor Wu's heart. At that time, Emperor Wu, deeply in love with her, even built a luxurious golden house to keep her in seclusion. However, this beautiful marriage did not last. As Emperor Wu's power grew and his mindset changed, Chen Ajiao was eventually deposed and spent her final years in the cold palace, alone and abandoned. Her tragic end is perfectly illustrated in the Changmen Fu, becoming a sorrowful story in history. Next, we move on to the relationship between Emperor Wu and his second empress, Wei Zifu. This story began at a banquet, where Emperor Wu first encountered the singer Wei Zifu at the residence of his sister, Princess Pingyang. Her singing and talents captivated Emperor Wu. At the time, Wei Zifu was merely a palace singer, but Emperor Wu brought her into the palace, beginning her court career. Wei Zifu was intelligent and quick-witted, gradually rising from a beautiful woman to the empress, winning the favor of Emperor Wu. However, in the end, she could not escape the fate of being caught up in the emperor's suspicions and power struggles. She was ultimately forced to her death, leaving behind many untold tragedies in the palace. Then, there is the story of the beautiful Li Meiren. Li Meiren entered the palace with unparalleled beauty, winning Emperor Wu's affection and becoming an important figure in the harem. Her beauty stirred the emperor's heart, but her fate was tragically short. Li Meiren passed away young due to illness, and at her death, she even refused to allow Emperor Wu to see her one last time. Her death became one of Emperor Wu's deepest regrets and one of the biggest pains of his life. Next, we have the 21-year-old Gouyi consort. Gouyi consort was Emperor Wu's most beloved consort in his later years, and her appearance changed the power dynamics in his harem. More importantly, the son she bore eventually succeeded to the throne and became the new emperor of the Han Dynasty, Emperor Zhao of Han, Lu Fuling. Historical records show that Emperor Wu greatly favored Gouyi consort. But after one of their intimate encounters, he issued an order to have her executed. This raises questions, as Gouyi consort was indeed deeply favored by Emperor Wu in his later years. Many believed she was one of his most beloved consorts. Yet, her fate was incredibly tragic. Why did such a dramatic reversal happen? First, it is important to note that Emperor Wu was not the kind of person to discard someone once they were no longer useful. The dramatic change in Gouyi consort's fate was more due to his decision made under unbearable circumstances. Emperor Wu was a highly astute ruler, and in his later years, he was extremely eager to maintain his power and vitality. Although his harem contained many beautiful women, Gouyi consort stood out. Not only was she beautiful, but she also had a unique charm that made Emperor Wu deeply reliant on her. According to some historians, Gouyi consort was not initially deeply favored by the emperor, but rather, her arrival carried a certain legendary quality. Her entrance into the palace was no coincidence. It was tied to Emperor Wu's search for immortality and spiritual pursuits. This sense of destiny made it impossible for Emperor Wu to resist her allure. In general, what an emperor fears most in his later years is aging. With young concubines by his side, he can still feel youthful and vibrant, and even hope that they will carry on the royal bloodline. Lady Gouyi precisely fulfilled this need, and as a result, Emperor Wu of Han showered her with affection, thinking of her as a precious gem. Thus, unless Lady Gouyi did something that Emperor Wu could no longer tolerate, She should have been able to continue enjoying favor in the palace. However, after Lady Gouyi gave birth to a son for Emperor Wu, the situation changed. Her identity as a mother and her expectations for her son led to a shift in her mindset. She began to feel that, compared to Empress Wei, she was not inferior in status. Although Empress Wei was the empress, she was originally from a humble background as a singer. Whereas Lady Gouyi's background and family were superior to Wei Zifu's. Thus, Lady Gouyi began to feel dissatisfied with the status quo, gradually developing the idea that if Empress Wei's son could become the crown prince, then perhaps her own son also had a right to compete for the position. Her ambitions and hopes for her son grew, eventually becoming uncontrollable. Some historical records indicate that when Lady Gouyi began to push for her son's claim to the crown prince position, she started seeking out forces that could support her, ultimately allying herself with the eunuch Jiang Chong. Jiang Chong was not only a favored courtier of Emperor Wu but also had an old connection with Lady Gouyi's father, making their collaboration seem inevitable. However, Jiang Chong's ambitions and actions were far from simple. As a eunuch, he had almost unchecked power in the imperial harem, thanks to Emperor Wu's favor, and even looked down on Crown Prince Lu Ju. But in Emperor Wu's later years, Jiang Chong began to feel uneasy, as the emperor aged. He feared that without the emperor's protection, he would be targeted by the crown prince. Thus, to safeguard himself, Jiang Chong decided to support Lady Gouyi and her son, trying to replace Crown Prince Lu Ju with her son and plot against Lu Ju. In this process, Jiang Chong noticed the subtle relationship between Emperor Wu and Crown Prince Lu Ju. Although Emperor Wu cherished his son, he became wary of Lu Ju's power and influence. Crown Prince Lu Ju's influence was growing, with support from General Wei Qing. And the prince himself was known for his intelligence and high reputation in the court. For some once dominant emperors, such a situation was impossible to ignore. Especially as Emperor Wu entered his later years, with his greatest fear being aging. Emperor Wu, faced with the growing power of his son, began to feel threatened, fearing that his position might be usurped by Lu Ju. Jiang Chong keenly sensed this and skillfully exploited Emperor Wu's growing paranoia in his later years. At the time, Emperor Wu became increasingly superstitious about witchcraft and divination. He had lost 2 daughters due to witchcraft accusations, making him highly sensitive to such matters and often trapped in guilt and panic. He even dreamed that little wooden dolls were attacking him with knives and swords, which only deepened his conviction that he was being plotted against. Therefore, Jiang Chong seized the opportunity and informed Emperor Wu of the Han that his unease and dreams were signs that someone was using witchcraft to harm him. Emperor Wu believed this deeply and ordered Jiang Chong to investigate the matter thoroughly. Naturally, Jiang Chong did not let this opportunity slip by. He began to carefully orchestrate events, attempting to direct all suspicion toward the crown prince, Lu Ju. First, he secretly planted several witchcraft dolls near the residences of the crown prince and the empress, hinting that these dolls represented the crown prince, who was scheming against the emperor with witchcraft. Next, Jiang Chong fabricated an imperial order from Emperor Wu, directing his subordinates to suppress the crown prince. Faced with this series of actions, Crown Prince Lu Ju naturally felt wronged and decided to personally meet Emperor Wu to explain the truth. However, Jiang Chong moved faster. As the crown prince was preparing to send troops to protect himself, Jiang Chong had already accused him of plotting rebellion to Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu was enraged and immediately dispatched troops to surround and capture the crown prince. When faced with the sudden onslaught, Lu Ju had no choice but to resist. Despite his efforts, he was unable to change his fate. He was forced to death, becoming a tragic victim in this power struggle. The witchcraft disaster not only led to the untimely death of Lu Ju, the crown prince, but also claimed the life of Empress Wei Zifu. Empress Wei was implicated by the crown prince's death. She was not only scolded by Emperor Wu but also, unable to bear the immense humiliation and pressure, chose to take her own life. In this palace turmoil, although Jiang Chong set up a complex scheme, he too could not escape death. He was executed by Emperor Wu for his series of false accusations and manipulations. For Consort Gouyi, this turn of events was undoubtedly a God-given opportunity. The deaths of the Crown Prince and Empress Wei removed the greatest obstacles in her and her son's path to power. Consort Gouyi not only escaped involvement but also benefited from the political upheaval, clearing away all threats to her son's succession. Her position became more secure, and she began to pursue even greater ambitions. However, Emperor Wu's empire needed a successor. After the death of Lu Ju, the crown prince, Emperor Wu was forced to choose another heir from his other sons. Ultimately, Consort Gouyi's son, Lu Fuling, was selected as the new crown prince. However, after this decision was made, Emperor Wu was suddenly reminded and realized that he had made a grave mistake. Filled with regret, he decided to investigate and eliminate everyone involved in the plot against Crown Prince Lu Ju. Unfortunately, despite Emperor Wu's decision, Lu Ju could never be brought back to life. Moreover, since Lu Fuling had already been chosen as the successor, Emperor Wu did not intend to make any further changes. But for the scheming and highly capable Consort Gouyi, Emperor Wu decided that she could no longer be allowed to live. After all, Lu Fuling was still young, and if Consort Gouyi remained alive, she would undoubtedly use her political maneuvering to influence the court and affect her son's reign. Thus, after Consort Gouyi's imperial service one evening, Emperor Wu ruthlessly decided to have her executed. According to relevant historians, Consort Gouyi's eventual execution was a fate long determined. Since her involvement in the witchcraft disaster, she had been steadily marching toward her downfall. Although it is unclear whether Emperor Wu was completely deceived, and it is even possible that he tacitly approved of the crown prince's death, his heart was filled with contradiction. Emperor Wu could not have been without guilt over Lu Ju's death. As a result, Consort Gouyi ultimately became another victim of this power struggle. It is worth mentioning that after Lu Fuling ascended the throne as Emperor Zhao, he posthumously honored his mother, Zhao Shi, Consort Gouyi, as Empress Dowager, and sent 20,000 people to build Yunling to bury her. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.